Welcome back, students who are taking financial accounting, and in this series of videos we are working through the Chapter 1 short exercises. And before I get started, just remember, if you don't understand something after you watch the video, pause and rewind and watch it as many times as you need. But if you still don't understand, feel free to contact an instructor either via email or by telephone. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off, which was short exercise 1-4. Okay. All right, so this says basic accounting equation. Determine the missing amounts in the following accounting equations. So we have three equations, A, B, and C here, right? And so this is just a relatively simple mathematical issue here. When you know 2 out of 3, you can always figure out the third. So it's just a manipulation of the data. All right, just as a quick aside, if I'm looking at something like, say, 3 plus what equals 5, intuitively, you say 2 because you've just done the math so many times in your life. It's relatively easy. But the reality is that you're taking 3 plus, and let's just call this x is equal to 5, and what you're doing is you're going to isolate the x, so you manipulate the formula. Okay, you want the x on one side of the equal sign. It doesn't matter whether it's the right or left. Okay, so you're going to take this here 3, and remember this is a positive 3 even though it doesn't say plus in front of it. Okay, so when you take this positive 3 and you move it across, whenever you go across the equal sign, it changes the sign. And that's why I pointed out that this is a positive 3, because when we move it across the equal sign, now it becomes a minus 3. Okay, so we're left with x is equal to 5 minus 3. We do the math, x is equal to 2, so that we know 3 plus 2 is equal to 5. Okay, so that's the basic math behind it, and that's all we're doing here with the accounting equation. Okay, when you have the accounting equation, we have assets equals liability plus equity. Okay, so if we put numbers in here, we had 5 is equal to what plus 3. Okay, if we want to know what the liability is, we're going to move the plus 3 over across the equal sign. That's going to be a minus 3 plus 5. Okay, and that's going to give us a 2. Or if we had, say, 5 is equal to 2 plus what? Okay, again, we'll move the 2 across the equal sign, so that's going to be a minus 2 plus 5. That gives us 3 is equal to our equity. Okay, so it's just basic math. It's just manipulating the formula. And so let's just quickly do that here. There just happen to be bigger numbers. All right, so if I have for A, let's work out A. If I have 106, oops. 106, and for those who don't know, you'll see me use the letter K, which represents thousands. Okay, see, so I have 106,000. Well, instead of writing all of the zeros, I have to write zeros here. I have to see all these places I have to write zeros. That represents thousands. Okay, accountants will just quickly write in 106K. The K represents thousands. So if I have 106 is equal to 24K, 24,000 plus what? Well, I'm going to move the 24 over. So I have 106. And since that's a positive 24, when it crosses the equal sign, it's a minus 24K equals what? And so 106 minus 24 is 82,000. Okay, so the answer to this is 82,000. Right? Simple math. That's all this problem is. Yes, we're manipulating the accounting equation, but it's basically a math problem. All right, number B, what is equal to 63 plus 28? Well, 63 and 28 is 91. Okay, it's 91,000. All right, simple math. And 94 is equal to what plus 45? Okay, so again, we want to isolate the unknown variable, and to do that, we're going to move everything across the equal sign, right? So positive 45 becomes a minus 45, and so that ends up being 49,000. So this is 49,000. Okay, right. That's all there is to that's 1-4. The short exercise 1-4. Right. Next, the basic accounting equation. Before I go on with this, the thought just did occur to me. You know, even though this last problem was just so simplistic, okay, it's like, why even, you know, I mean, to me anyway, all right, because I've been doing this for 30 years, right? The point I'm making here is that it behooves you to do the homework problems, okay? I realize, you know, there may be some of you who are just watching these videos from front to back, you know, from beginning to end. And so, you know, this is more pointed towards you in that it behooves you to do the homework problems before you watch the videos. Because remember, accounting is about application. It's about understanding and application. It's one thing to comprehend, and you only comprehend by watching or reading. But when you're actually doing it, the learning is in the doing, okay, regardless of how easy something is. Okay, that's the application aspect of it. So don't just skip over stuff. If you know, I mean, if I were doing this, you know, yeah, I would have skipped S1-4 because it's just so easy. But when I came over here to 1-5, and this is what triggered in my mind, what I just got done saying is because now all of a sudden I have a word problem, okay, which looks very different from 1-4, okay, and you can never have enough practice doing word problems. Okay, because in a word problem, if you had watched or you had the subject math for business and finance, when doing word problems, my take on it is you have information that's directly related to solving the problem. You have information that has nothing to do with solving the problem, and you have information that has to be manipulated in solving the problem. Okay, that's the information part, but you have to understand what is being asked. If you don't understand what's being asked, then what happens is you can make mistakes as to what's directly related, what has nothing to do with the problem, and especially if information has to be manipulated. Because generally, when you manipulate information, when information has to be manipulated, it's not in the form that you need. So people have a tendency to think, oh, it has nothing to do with the problem, and immediately they're getting the problem wrong. Okay, because it doesn't look like what they need in order to solve the problem. So you have to understand what the problem is asking. Okay, um, because you can have a concept, but that, you know, that concept can have many different applications, and depending upon what application you're looking at, in other words, understanding what's being asked in the problem, will determine what you do with the data. Okay? All right, so after that little diatribe, all right, speech. Okay, so let's move on. 1-5. Right, Ellen Beach owns Ellen's Lawn Care Service. The business has cash of $13,000. So when I read that, the first thing that came into my mind is cash is an asset, right? And we have 13,000. And the other thing that came into my mind is that amount might go up and down. Now, I haven't read the rest of the problem, okay? But I know cash is an asset, and I know I'm starting at 13, and that amount may change. And equipment, that costs 35,000. So equipment is also an asset, all right? Debts of the business include accounts payable, which is a liability of 9,000, and 5,000 note payable. That's also a liability. Determine the amount of stockholders' equity Ellen has in the business. Okay, so that's what is being asked. Determine the amount of stockholders' equity. That's what I'm solving for. Write the accounting equation for Ellen's lawn service. So I know the accounting equation is assets is equal to liabilities plus equity. Okay, And as I had said, cash is an asset, so I have cash of 13,000 and equipment of 35,000. Okay, so then it says debts include accounts payable of 9,000. Remember, accounts payable is a liability, and notes payable is 5,000. And remember, generally, if you see the word payable, that means it's a liability. It's something you owe. It's something you still have to pay out. Okay. Determine the stockholder's equity. Okay, well, my assets, I have 48,000, and that equals my liabilities of 14,000. Oops. 14,000 plus whatever my equity is. Okay, so we're going to solve for the equity by just moving the 48,000 across the equal sign and changing the sign, so it's 48,000 minus 14,000, which gives me my equity, and that ends up being 34,000 in equity. Okay, so my equity is, ends up 34,000. Okay. Okay. All right, let me see, I'm at 11 minutes. Let me see what the next question says. Pretty much basically the same thing. All right, so let me cover that one real quick too. All right. So Bohms has cash of 36,000. Remember, cash is an asset. Supplies costing 1,500. Well, we're going to consider the supplies as an asset because we're talking about the accounting equation. And stockholders' equity of 28,000. Determine the liabilities and write the accounting equation for Bohms. All right, so same thing. Assets equals liabilities plus equity. So I have cash of 36,000. Oops. 36,000. Supplies of 1,500. And equity of 28,000. So I have 37,500 for assets, and that equals liabilities plus 28,000 in equity. So I want to isolate my liabilities. I do that by taking the 37,500, moving the 28,000 across the equal sign, which makes it a negative 28,000, and that will equal my liability. And so that amount ends up being $9,500 is my liability. Okay, so I would plug in the $9,500 here as part of my accounting equation. Okay, let's see here. Quick borrowed. All right, so this is going to be slightly different, so I'm going to pause here, stop the video here, and pick up with the next problem in the next video.